Look, I know what the official records say about the Treaty of Sol. They talk about politics, star charts, and resource allocation. But I was there. I was standing right outside the blast doors when the universe actually shifted. And let me tell you, it didn't happen in a council meeting. It happened in the sterile, white light of the medical wing, where High Exarch Calith, the woman who burned the Centauri cluster, was doing the one thing forbidden to a god. She was praying. I saw it myself. The biomonitors were humming that rhythmic, anxious beep that gets under your skin. Commander Vance was lying there, half his chest wrapped in regenerative gels, looking more like broken porcelain than a soldier. And Calith? She wasn't commanding. She was leaning over him, her forehead resting against the cool metal of the bed frame, her hand covering his, not gripping it like a weapon, holding it, like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. I saw her thumb brush over his knuckles, rough, scarred human skin against her pale, perfect Valkyr fingers. She let out a breath that sounded too much like a sob for someone with ice in her veins. But to understand why that moment broke me, you have to understand where we started. You have to go back 3 weeks to the day the victory felt more like a funeral. We were in the Obsidian Spire. The war was technically over. We'd crushed the Terran fleet above Mars. Calith was sitting on that ridiculous throne, reviewing the casualty analytics. The room was cold, smelling of ozone and polished stone. Her advisors were buzzing around, talking about executing prisoners to send a message. Calith just stared at the holographic displays. She looked hollow. I remember thinking that she looked less like a queen and more like a statue someone had forgotten to dust. Then the report came up. One Terran pilot, Commander Roan Vance, he'd taken out 3 of our elite interceptors before his engines died. He didn't eject. He just waited. "Bring him to me," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the advisor's chatter like a laser. When they dragged Vance in, he was a mess. His flight suit was scorched, his arm favored, smelling of burnt circuitry and old sweat. But when the guards kicked the back of his knees to force a bow, he didn't buckle. He took off his helmet. Truth is, I expected him to spit at her or beg. Humans usually do one or the other. Instead, he just looked at her. He had these dark, tired eyes, and he didn't look at the crown or the guards or the weapons. He looked right at her, and it wasn't fear I saw in his face. It was pity. It rattled her. I saw Calith stiffen, her fingers tightening on the armrest until the metal groaned. "You stand before the architect of your destruction," she said, trying to summon that old fire. "I stand before a woman in a very high tower," Vance rasped, his voice rough from smoke. "It must be quiet up here." She should have killed him right then. The Calith I knew would have, but she didn't. She ordered him to the containment cells, and then the visit started. It was unsanctioned. I was on the night rotation, guarding the secure wing. She'd come down after the cycle dimmed, cloaked in gray, slipping past the sensors I'd conveniently deactivated. She'd just sit there on the other side of the laser grid. At first, she asked for tactical data. He gave her nothing, so she asked him why he fought. "For the Saturday markets in Rio," he told her once. "For the sound of rain on a tin roof. For jazz." "Jazz?" she asked. And right there, in the belly of the enemy ship, he hummed a melody. It was a clumsy, broken little tune, but in that sterile hallway, it sounded like a heartbeat. I watched Calith close her eyes. I think it was the first time in a decade she'd heard something that wasn't an order or a scream. The wall between them started to thin. She stopped wearing her ceremonial armor when she visited. He stopped calling her Exarch. But the council was getting restless. They wanted a public execution. They wanted blood. And Calith, she was stalling. I saw the way she looked at the execution order on her datapad, her finger hovering over the authorization, shaking just a little. She was waking up. And that is a dangerous thing for a weapon to do. It wasn't the council that forced the issue. It was the explosion that rocked the spire 3 days later. I was manning the perimeter of the throne room when the alarm started screaming, a pitch so high it made your teeth ache. A Terran extraction team had bypassed the orbital grid. They weren't there to negotiate. They were there to cut the head off the snake. They breached the main doors with thermal charges. Smoke filled the air, thick and acrid, smelling of burning carpet and vaporized metal. I was thrown back against a pillar, ears ringing, watching the chaos unfold in slow motion. Kalith was exposed. Her personal guard was down, scattered by the blast. A Terran commando in heavy assault armor raised a plasma rifle, aiming squarely at her chest. She didn't flinch, I'll give her that. She just stood there, accepting it. Then the containment field on the sidewall flickered and died. Power failure from the blast. Vance was free. Any other prisoner would have run. The breach was right there. He could have scrambled over the debris, signaled his team, and gone home to his reign on tin roofs. But he didn't. I saw him sprint, not away from the danger, but right into the center of it. He tackled the commando just as the trigger pulled. The shot went wide, scorching the ceiling, but the commando backhanded Vance with a gauntleted fist, sending him crashing into the dais. Vance scrambled up, bloody and unarmed, placing himself between the assassin and the Exarch. He shouted something, not in our tongue, but in theirs. A command, stand down. The commando hesitated. That hesitation cost him. My squad recovered and flooded the room, weapons raised. But it was Kaylee's voice that stopped the massacre. "Hold!" she screamed. It wasn't a regal command. It was panicked, raw. She scrambled down from the dais, ignoring the security protocols, ignoring the fact that she was the most valuable target in the galaxy. She fell to her knees beside Vance. He'd taken shrapnel in the side, bleeding red onto the polished obsidian floor. "You fool," she whispered, her hands pressing against the wound. "You were free." Vance looked up at her, teeth gritted in pain, and managed a weak, jagged smile. "If I leave, you just stay in the tower," he wheezed. Someone has to open the door." That brings us back to where I started, the medical wing, the quiet, the prayer. After the medics stabilized him, the council demanded he be transferred to maximum security. They called him a manipulator, a threat. Kalith walked out of that medical room and looked at her high general. I've never seen eyes that cold. "The war is over," she said. "Exarch?" the general asked, confused. "The prisoner remains," she declared, "and he is no longer a prisoner. He is my counsel." Vance didn't take the easy way out. When he woke up, Kalith offered him a ship. She offered him a clear flight path back to Earth. He refused. He told her that tearing down an empire takes two sets of hands, one to dismantle the weapons and one to build the foundation. 5 years later. I'm retired now, Mom, but I watched the broadcast of the summit at Proxima. It was a historic day. The treaty lay on the table, not a surrender, but a partnership. Kaylee stood at the podium. She looked different. The heavy golden crown was gone, replaced by a simple circlet. She looked less like a statue and more like a living, breathing woman, and standing just to her right, wearing the simple gray tunic of a reformist advisor, was Roan Vance. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. But right before Kalith signed the document that ended 100 years of bloodshed, I saw her glance at him. Just a quick flicker of eyes. He gave her a subtle nod, a private signal amidst 1,000 cameras. The universe saw a political alliance. But I was there in the beginning. I knew better. I looked at the screen and I saw two people who had finally escaped their cages. And truth is, that was the only victory that mattered.